So, how do we know that the economy is doing well? And you always hear the statements, the economy is doing well, or inflation is high on the news. But as students of you don't just hear these statements, you try to interpret them and understand how public administrators translate them into policies. And for us, we have to know the impact of these policies and statements on budgets, programs, and of course, the people's lives. So today, our topic is about macroeconomic measures of performance. And these are the tools that policymakers use to assess the overall health of the economy. And they guide the national budgeting, social protection programs, infrastructure planning, wage protection, wage policies, and local development planning. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain the major macroeconomic indicators, interpret what they really mean and what they don't mean, and then you have to be able to apply them in the Philippine context. Why do macroeconomic indicators matter in public administration? Macroeconomic indicators are not abstract numbers or graphs. They answer very practical questions such as, can the government afford new programs? Should taxes be increased or reduced? Does our country need spending, or does the government need to adopt austerity measures? Why are the prices of commodities increasing? But why is the government reporting that there is growth in the economy? So we hear this from Philippine agencies like the NEDA, the PSA, and Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and of course, the Department of Budget and Management. You know, these agencies use these indicators to justify policies, budgets, and reforms. As future administrators, you will be asked to defend decisions, someday to justify decisions using analysis, economic analysis. For example, COA audits or public consultations. You have to be able to link the principles and concepts of macroeconomics to these policies. So the first one is gross domestic product. So what is gross domestic product? GDP is the total monetary value of all final goods and services produced in the country during the specific period, usually 1 year. So remember the keyword, produced within the economy, within the country. So there are 3 ways to measure GDP. What are the 3 ways? First is production approach. Second is expenditure approach. And third is the income approach. Production approach adds all the values produced by different sectors. While expenditure approach, you're looking at consumption, investment, government spending, and of course net exports. Like when we import, we have to subtract the total amount of imported product value from the export. So that is what we call net exports. And then the income approach, which measures the total wages, rent, interest, and profits. So, in practice, public administrators usually encounter GDP via growth rates, not raw numbers, percentages. In the Philippines, we apply the GDP analysis when NEDA reports that the Philippine economy grew by, for example, 5.6%, because this affects revenue projections by the DBM. And of course, they have to assess incurring debt, for the country, debt, utang. And then the credit ratings, which affect borrowing from other countries. Of course, the local planning would also be affected by these numbers, because GDP growth does not mean everyone is better off. It may mean another thing. What are the limitations of the gross domestic product analysis? GDP does not measure several things like income distribution. It does not reflect how much income goes to which sector. So income gaps, or the inequality of the income distribution, wealth distribution in the economy or society, is not reflected in this macroeconomic measure. Of course, also it does not tell us about poverty levels. It does not indicate qualitative measures of well-being, the quality of public services, environmental impacts of the economic activities. Unpaid care work is also a big issue in the economy. These are not read in the figures and numbers as reflected in the GDP. So, when a policymaker says the economy is growing, a public administrator should ask, growing for whom? Or which sectors are benefiting? And what are the costs of this growth? There are costs. At what cost do these economic growth occur? So, we come now to the measure of the gross national income. What's the difference or distinction between the GDP and the GNI, or the gross national income? So, the gross national income adds income earned by nationals abroad. So, it considers the incomes of the OFWs minus incomes earned by foreigners locally. So, because there are foreigners earning in our country, we have to deduct all the earnings of these foreign nationals, because they eventually remit this to their own countries. So, this is very crucial. How do we look at a GDP? It should also reflect this, because it will not be complete to just say that we have so much of those incomes earned within the country, because there are many Filipinos working abroad, and at the same time there are also many foreigners working within our country. So but why does the gross national income matter in the Philippines? It's because of the OFW. So the remittances of the OFWs support the consumption of the households. They subsidize the peso, and they increase the national income significantly. And of course, the OFW, or the employment abroad, would make up for domestic job shortages. Okay, domestic job shortages, which is a lot, significant. So there's this mindset of Filipinos to work abroad because of the limited opportunities within our country. From a public administrator's perspective, the gross national income affects poverty statistics, and it also influences planning for social protection. So, and we have to explain why consumption remains high even if our domestic and industries are weak. But of course, reliance from the remittances also gives rise to governance issues like, brain drain, wherein instead of the Philippines benefiting from the services and, of course, the intelligence of the Filipinos, they are being used in the economies of other countries because they have to work abroad. And OFWs have to leave their families, and these are social costs. And of course, ultimately, at large, there is weak domestic job creation. That is a reflection of the GNI. So GNI again is you total all the incomes earned by OFWs, and then deduct the total income of foreigners working within our territory. So, if GDP is rising but people feel poorer, what could explain that? And this is the question that leads us to inflation and unemployment. So, inflation is, what is inflation? So, you know what this is, no? Inflation is the sustained rise in the price level of goods and services over time. So in the Philippines, inflation is measured using Consumer Price Index by the Philippine Statistics Office. So why is it important for public administrators to know this? Because inflation affects, one, the purchasing power of the salaries of the people. And then the cost of public projects also are affected. And of course, social protection, the budgets, no, for social protection and addressing the concerns of poverty are affected by inflation. So what is inflation? It's a sustained rise in the prices of commodities over time. So example is when 1,000 peso cash assistance program loses value because inflation rises. So yung mga ayuda na binibigay natin, so pag nag-increase ang mga presyo ng commodity, nagiging weak yung purchasing power ng ating mga pera. Infrastructure projects exceeds budget due to rising material costs. So you can imagine how the public works are affected by this. And knowing what's happening in the public works, no, there are many instances of graft and corruption, and so it is not only a concern of financial planning, but it will have an impact on safety, no, in the case of public works. So inflation is very critical. So in the Philippines, the recent inflation episodes are caused by food supply issues like the shortage of rice or onions, or the rise of the price of sugar because of various factors, no? And then the rise in global oil prices, no? And of course, peso depreciation. And this explains why the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas uses interest rate policies. So, or the Department of Agriculture, for example, focuses on food supply chains to avert the impact, or to mitigate the impact of rising prices. And on the part of the Department of Social Works and Development, they have to be ready to adjust social assistance level. They have to increase yung ayuda, no? It's important for public administrators to know this measure, inflation. So you have to watch out when you join the mainstream of administration. Watch out for rising prices. And then another one is policy trade-off. So, high inflation causes the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to raise the interest rates. So, these are correlated, no? So, when there are higher prices, the interest rates also rise. Higher interest rates will means lower investment and growth. Why? Because it's more expensive to borrow capital, and so industries tend to contract because of this. And then public administrators, because of this, must balance the prices. So that's where you apply. That's where Keynesian economics work, no? When there is instability or threats of instability, and inflation is one of the measures or signs, then the policymakers must be alert, no? And they have to balance policies and programs, and to ensure economic growth and also secure social protection. So I hope that is clear. So we go na to the next indicator, which is employment and unemployment, and we consider also the quality of employment. So what is unemployment class, no? Unemployment refers to the percentage of labor force that is willing to work. They are willing and able, but they cannot find a job, no? So in the Philippines, this is complicated by mismatched between expertise and availability of jobs, no? The quality of jobs, or the kind of jobs that are available. So many students graduate, and then eventually many of them cannot find jobs because their field does not match what the industries need. So also there's this informal employment, and so they end up looking for jobs in the informal sector, and then also they have to be satisfied being part-time workers, so they are underemployed, or they have to they have to accept contractual jobs. So contractualization is also one issue. And why this matters in governance is that low employment does not automatically mean good jobs, no? low unemployment. Low unemployment does not automatically mean good jobs. So many Filipinos are employed but unpaid, or they are employed but they are insecure, or because of their status as contractual workers, or employed but they are not given social protection. Wala silang SSS, or wala silang PhilHealth, and uh, this would affect so many things in public administration, like uh, coverage for SSS or PhilHealth, and of course, not only the coverage but the amount of coverage, the tax base, so, and then also the long-term productivity. Okay, so these are considerations when we look at employment or under unemployment, employment or unemployment. And so what do we have to consider in government? We're looking at economy, but we should look at what the agencies are doing, like the TESDA, what kind of trainings are being offered, no? And then that's the Department of Labor and Employment give livelihood assistance, or public employment programs are also being open to the public. So these programs are justified using employment statistics, not just unemployment rates, but you're looking at how many people are employed and the kind of employment they have. And of course, if we dig deeper, what about job satisfaction? Job satisfaction is also considered. So these measures are not taken by piece, no? You have to consider other factors or dimensions. Next measure is complex. The next indicators are compound indicators, like the next compound indicators are poverty, inequality, and other related factors. So poverty incidence is correlated with the GDP, or inflation, or in unemployment. So as I said, these measures are not complete in themselves. You have to correlate them with other facts like poverty or income inequality, and so thus there are measures like the Human Development Index. So there is another lecture or lesson on that, no? And then as for the implications on public administration, when we consider poverty, we have to, for public administration, poverty statistics are crucial, no? For example, in addressing the beneficiaries of the 4Ps, no? Do we review such programs of the government? Do they address the current needs? And then also, when we look at development planning at the local level, do they address the extent of poverty that is present in their jurisdiction? And also gender may also be a relevant indicator because poverty affects so many. And then there is this other concern for inequality or equality, which affect society. Uh, it affects trust of the people on the government, and then we look at whether the government still have legitimacy. As administrators, the numbers indicated in the statistics like unemployment or interest rates or inequality, it's not enough that we have all these statistics. There must be corresponding policies and programs to address the real situation in the ground. And so it's not just for reporting, but for the most important thing is how do we use these statistics to improve the quality of life of people. So using macroeconomic indicators in decision making. So a competent public administrator should be able to read economic reports critically and analyze them. And then you have to be able to explain the numbers to people in plain language. And of course, when you are faced with these numbers, you have to anticipate the social effect or the macroeconomic impact of this on the lives of people, and to also come up with policies and programs to avert any adverse consequences or more adverse effects, of these statistics. The public administration sector must align the numbers with actual economic conditions, because these are parang when you go to a doctor, you have to bring your blood works or tests. So the macroeconomic indicators are like blood tests, so that blood test results, and they are very important tools to diagnose what the status of the economy is. And they do not provide final answers, of course, because they are just tools, to analyze. When you analyze what they do, you have to do something when you find out the reality. And using your knowledge of public administration, how do you address the real concerns of people? These are important inputs to policy. They are not final reports or judgment of what the economy is or how the economy is doing. A growing economy with rising inequality is actually a problem. And of course, you know that inflation with constant wages. So there's inflation, but the wages are not rising. There's no corresponding rise in the salaries and wages. This is a policy problem. It's a sign. No? So you have to be able to know whether the government is doing its job properly. And if you are there already, part of the government, you have to do the right thing, take the proper action. we hope that someday you will be part of that uh, leadership which will make good management decisions. Good numbers with uh, good numbers with poor lived experiences is an accountability problem. So, for example, there is growth rate, but the quality of life of the people is filled with problems, so like crimes or dissatisfaction or brain drain. People are going to look for jobs in other countries, and many other things that are signs of that are qualitative, diba? You have to be able to measure not only quantitatively but qualitatively, and after having done your measurement and after considering the numbers, no, macro of these macroeconomic indicators, you have to do your role, no, as public administrators to connect to connect the numbers with reality through programs. What are the programs that the people need so that they will be spared or from the impact of an economy in trouble, or even if the economy is rising, how do you look at all the other problems such as inequality or gender issues and other important things? So how do we improve governance so that we can improve the trust rating of the public? So that's how you use macroeconomic indicators. So review this chapter and consider looking not be intimidated by the computations or uh, drawing up the graphs or analyzing the numbers. You have to analyze to become good public servants. So thank you for listening, and in the next chapter in the next lecture we will look at how economic indicators influence policy decisions, like fiscal policy decisions or monetary policy decisions. So good day, and thank you.